Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. I'm Ekaterina Walter, Marketing Director at YPO, and it is my distinct privilege to moderate today's broadcast with two extraordinary YPO members, Ken Natori and Ankur Daga. Ken Natori is president of the Natori Company, a designer fashion brand with collections ranging from ready-to-wear lingerie and sleepwear to home textiles, accessories, bath, legwear, and now fine jewelry. Ankur Daga is the founder and CEO of Angara, the #1 ranked fine jewelry DTC website, according to Newsweek. Welcome, Ken and Ankur.
Great to be here.
Great to be here. Thanks for having us.
Very good. Well, if you're watching us live, post your questions in the comments section below, and we will answer as time permits. Now, let's kick it off. Let's get right to it. Now, we know that retail landscape is changing. What is the biggest change that will affect this holiday season? Ken, let's start with you.
So I think, we're not unique in that we're facing what a lot of companies that were previously exclusively wholesale were facing. As you mentioned, we're a high-end designer and manufacturer of products ranging from sleepwear to loungewear to ready-to-wear. 12 years ago, we were really exclusively wholesale, and since then, we've started our own D2C website, Natori.com. Every year that has continued to become a bigger part of the business. So, that story continues to play out. I think, one thing that we see outside of the bigger picture, which is that, we still are predicting growth. We're very excited about our online prospects over the next couple of months. One trend that we've been dealing with and continue to deal with now is just the complete, the pure transparency, the increased transparency, I guess, season after season. Right now, more than ever, and certainly even more than last year, a customer can look up one of our products and look up similar products that could be made of the same fabric, same details, and really have full transparency in terms of, hey, what is out there, what else is on the market between us and our competitors, and even more so, we sell the same products on our website, sometimes to some of our department store channels as well. So customers can really see more so than ever in real time, what is the best pricing? What are the advantages of shopping on all of these different sites? So really, it is, there's complete transparency out there, which is a great challenge for us as we try to navigate all of these different channels.
Ankur, what's your perspective on it?
So I think the big mega trend that continues is really the shift to online. So what perhaps people don't realize is that it's still only 11% of the US market in revenue. And in comparison, there's over 80% of purchases made last year in the US had online research as a part of it. So so we see that in 2019, I think online sales overall are growing 14%. And that 10% is likely to get up to a third, I would say, over the next decade. And that growth is just accelerating even as the numbers increase. So online is, of course, becoming more and more important, just not in terms of just purchases, but also in terms of research that happens.
Well, to that point, wow, 11%, that's still pretty small number if you think about it, right? But talking about sort of customer transparency and online, now, Ankur, some companies like Warby Parker, Sephora have created experiences that allow consumers to try their products virtually, right? So before you buy them. With both of your companies being very sort of fit focused, are there any plans to incorporate similar AR, VR experiences into your existing digital shopping landscape? Or maybe will you create an experience like L'Oreal's that extends sort of into other shopping environments like maybe smart mirrors? What do you think, Ankur?
So I think the experience is really driven by the industry. So in jewelry, for example, a lot of women like to see jewelry on their specific skin tone. So we've created a sliding mechanism where you can see the skin tone that is most similar to you and see the actual jewelry piece on that skin tone. And we've received rave reviews for that, and it's been very helpful for customers. I think from an AR and VR standpoint, the technology needs to get to a point where it's really photoreal. Anything less than that becomes clunky and thus not accurate, not very helpful to the customer. So we've been beta testing technologies that I think are pretty close to photoreal. And I think in the next 3 months, we should have a solution that lets you see jewelry like you're looking at wearing it in a mirror. And that really is, I think, what would be the home run scenario, and we're pretty close to that.
Nice. Ken, what about your company? What are you doing?
So we try to be as innovative as possible. We are a family business, and we basically deal just with one brand and one website. So in some areas, we've been able to be very forward. We actually worked with somebody in my YPO chapter to use artificial intelligence to power our social media ad buying. So that's been, quite innovative. I think on the fit front, obviously we're very well known for bras. We're very well known for sleepwear. Getting fit right in those categories is incredibly important. However, the technology that's come out, whether it's, these things that help you find your fit, measure, and really, get your perfect size and really know exactly what's going to happen, like these virtual reality testing, they are all incredibly expensive at this point. And, as far as I can tell, none have really been pure home runs in terms of getting the technology totally right. So we recognize that fit is important, and some of these technologies are going to be great. However, in terms of us actually implementing them, being a family business where we're just focusing on our own brand, we're probably not going to be the leaders in terms of that.
Speaking of brand impact, Ankur, how have your marketing efforts changed in the last 5 years, right? Do you still find value in print, radio, TV? I know you both just mentioned social media, or maybe out of home, or do you basically focus on digital channels? Do you see digital channels providing a better ROI for you on that front?
So I think 99% plus of our spend is digital. And I think it's likely to stay that way. The ROI differential between, let's say, print, radio, and TV versus online for a D2C online player is massive. That being said, there are elements that we've incorporated, for example, video ads on YouTube and Instagram and so forth, that are very much in a TV type format, but just served digitally, have performed quite well. And they really draw the customer in. And it's easy for the customer that's drawn in to then come to our website with one click. That advantage we don't, of course, get through, for example, TV. And the effort it takes to get somebody from TV to online to your website is pretty substantial, which we're able to achieve a lot of the benefits of, let's say, a TV platform just through digital via video, and that's worked quite well.
Very good. Well, let me shift a little bit, gentlemen. So Ken, you've recently done a Fox interview, which was fantastic, and you talked about the impact of tariffs on business. So how have higher tariffs on US imports and exports impacted your business, and what changes will you make, if any, to offset the impact that you're seeing? Like, for example, will consumers feel those changes? If so, how? If not, why? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So, we're relatively fortunate. We actually have our own manufacturing facility, also, family-owned manufacturing facility in the Philippines, where we do about 70 to 80% of our manufacturing for the ready-to-wear, sleepwear, and loungewear categories, basically all of our in-house categories. That said, that other 20 to 30%, we do have a number of programs in China, and unfortunately, a number of those programs were fall programs that happened to hit in the weeks after September 1st, so they were all subject to that 15% tariff. The news cycle, the news flow is so crazy these days that I think, not to say that the issue has really taken a back seat, but in terms of the actual impact that those tariffs are having, it is very real, specifically to people like us. So, and I think the other important element of it for us is that, these happened all of a sudden. So a lot of our goods were on the water already when the 15% tariffs were announced. So what did that mean? That meant that our prices with our Chinese partners were set, and the prices which we were to sell these goods to our department stores were also set. So we were able to, negotiate with our Chinese manufacturers to the small degree that we have them to help sort of offset some of the costs of the tariff. But we, and I think a lot of other people in our position, have been in no position to pass any of that off to the retailers and ultimately to the customers because there's been so much demand and so much competition to get into these stores. So, from my seat, in terms of the impact of these tariffs, long term, will it affect consumer pricing? Of course it will. But I think in the short term, really, the way I see it, it really is just more of a direct negative impact for importers like us and some of the manufacturers that we deal with.
Okay, well, thanks. I think this is definitely an important issue. I want to talk about something that's a bit more fun. So you have recently formed a partnership between Natori and Angara. And so tell us about, how did it come about? What sort of facilitated it, and how did you, how did you know to get to know each other, and what the partnership entails?
Sure. So yeah, it was really quite fortuitous. So, somebody that we had worked with in the past, who we kept a very good relationship with, knew Ankur and his family from before, and really put us together. He knew that Ankur and Aditi wanted to get into brands and start working with brands, and because he knew our business and our family, he put the two of us together. So we had a couple of really good initial meetings talking about our experience licensing, talking about their experience and their tremendous supply chain and design capabilities in fine jewelry. So we had a couple of great initial meetings, and then I think we have a lot of great initial meetings with a lot of different partners. What really helped us solidify trust, and what really pushed our negotiations and sort of jettisoned our partnership, which is really one of the fastest partnerships we've ever entered. Once we both discovered that we were both in YPO, there was just a tremendous instant accountability, and not that we didn't have trust already, but it just really elevated that trust and really helped us just push, what sometimes can be a 6-month, year-long negotiation. We basically, I think, Ankur, am I right? We started talking in maybe March, April. We signed a deal in May, June, and we have product that's on both of our websites and soon to be shipped to stores. And it's November now. I mean, usually that whole process for us takes 1.5 years, 2 years, but really between the trust that we had in each other through YPO and their tremendous supply chain in terms of getting all of this stuff ready and designed, it's really been a great story so far.
Ankur, it seems like trust is definitely biggest impact here in business, right? And the biggest topic recently. So it seems like that really helped accelerate you guys' conversation and deals.
Yeah, I think the key takeaway is find a good partner in YPO and you're all set. Yeah.
Well, I love the plug. So we actually have a question from the audience. So it is from Julie Van Ness, and she's asking Ken, it's specifically a question for Ken. I like your perspective on transparency and innovation and love your products, but wondering what you're doing around sustainable fabrics and business practices, and how do you convey this to customers who care about this particular position?
Great, thank you. So I'm going to get to the sustainable fabrics part last. I will get to it, but I think the bigger trend that we've seen is important to customers that we've certainly acted on is just feeling more of a connection to the products they buy and the companies that make those products. So as I mentioned, we're a family-owned business, founded by my mother. She remains the CEO. I'm president. Whereas in the past all we did was make product, we realized how important it is to customers for us to storytell so that they feel connected with our brand and feel like that they can share our values. So we have done a lot more in terms of our manufacturing, for instance. As I mentioned, we have our own family-owned factory in the Philippines where we do a lion's share of our manufacturing. So we have video on our website of the factory, of the people that have been employed with us since the start of the company, and of the conditions in the factory, which I know is very important to people. We've always, to the degree that we have been able to, we've always given to charities, both in terms of time and money. Never really talked about it, but we know that that's very important to customers these days as well. So we created a sort of a page on our website called Natori Gives, and really sort of encapsulated all of our charitable activity under Natori Gives, whose mission is to empower and educate women around the world. Is it something we're comfortable talking about? Not necessarily, but we know it's important for customers to know, who we're supporting and what we're doing. So we do that as well. In terms of sustainable fabrics, I, as well as everybody in the fashion industry, are so pleased to see that there's been much more talk and much more action in terms of making the industry more green. In terms of actually using sustainable fabrics, though, my view, which may or may not be wrong, but I think a view that I share with many other people in the industry is that there's a lot of talk about people wanting companies to use sustainable fabrics. However, when it comes down to people actually, paying higher prices, whether that's, 10, 15, 20% for companies that can be purely sustainable, I am not sure, at least from what I've seen, I'm not sure customers are there, and if given that choice, would actually choose to pay more money. So we continue to hope that sustainable fabrics, the pricing comes down more to parity, in which case, we certainly would be much more involved in it. But as it is now, until we see customers kind of more willing to actually spend more money, we're not willing to put all of our eggs in that basket. But it is a trend that we hope to see continue to progress.
Okay. Good perspective. Well, going back to your partnership, let's talk a little bit about sort of traditional licenses. Ken, it seems that the traditional licensing model has become more challenging over the last few years for licensees. Why is that?
It has. So, for people not familiar with the model, the way it's worked in fashion in the past has really been somewhat department store dependent. So, as I mentioned, we're most known for sleepwear and bras and underwear. If we wanted to move into a new category, we would find an expert in that category and then sign a license. However, at that point, let's just, for example, made up category, let's just say it's Natori refrigerators, obviously fictional, but that refrigerator license would have to sign a deal with us, commit to minimums before any store would actually commit to buying them. So there's a lot of risk in the old traditional model for licensees. And basically what's happened is as department stores have, as there's been more risk to the department store model, that has made licensees less likely, understandably, to want to sign a long-term commitment to manufacturing for a brand if the chance that a department store is actually going to pick that up is less and less. So I think as the department store business has become more questionable, the old traditional licensing model has really, it's been, I don't want to say it's at risk, but it's been much harder to find those deals. And really one of the reasons our partnership with Angara has been so great, I'm sure Ankur will talk about it more, but they really are, the leading D2C designer and supplier of fine jewelry. So really partnering with a company that's got that D2C background has really been a tremendous home run for us.
And that's a great segue. Ankur, I actually am curious. Let's walk through Angara's strategy. When did you decide to make the move to licensing other brands, and how did you just find Natori through that? Just talk us through it.
So I think April of this year, we realized a couple of things. One is our supply chain, just to back up kind of on our supply chain, we're unique in that all of our jewelry is just in time made to order. So when an order is placed, that is when we start producing jewelry. And typically within 24 hours, we can ship the piece by making it from scratch. So that's a pretty unique skill set within the jewelry industry, and it enables us to do a lot of work on the customization side and on the design side as well. So that was, I guess, part one. Part two is we traditionally have been very strong on the classic designs front, but not as much on the fashion front. And it requires really a different mindset and a different design aesthetic, which Natori has. Natori has been very much leading over the last 20 years on the East meets West type design aesthetic and a very luxury, high quality, premium finished product. And that resonated very well with us. So I think when we started talking with Ken and Josie in May and June, that's really what was very compelling for us. And I think the other thing that was very compelling is Ken and Josie have amazing relationships with the leading retailers in the US. And part of our strategy was to say, okay, well, we have online and we're strong there, but we also want to have an online or offline presence with other brands. So for example, Natori, that could really utilize our supply chain and our skill set there. So that turned out to be a very natural fit for us.
Well, so the partnership seems like a great match, right? With a lot of synergies on both sides. Is there any advice you can give to other brands or licensees looking to form partnerships? Ken, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think for us, it's really been always more about partners than about category. So, we, as we've thought about, sure, there's certain categories that really may make more sense for us. We've been investing a lot into our ready-to-wear. So if we found, say, a footwear license or a handbag license or a costume jewelry license, like those are all categories that really make a ton of sense. And one possible strategy would be to say, okay, if we want shoes the most, let's go find, all the shoe licensees out there and figure out what makes the most sense. But for us, and as we talked about in the past comments, I would rather find a partnership, even in like I don't want to call it a B category, but maybe a category that we wouldn't think would be like the most natural fit for us. To me, having quality partners that we can trust, who believe in our brand, who can translate our design into their category, and who have the same sort of conservative premier distribution strategy as us, those things are all more important than a category itself. Really, at the end of the day, whether it's licensing or whether it's any of our other partnerships, the quality and the integrity of the people that we've dealt with matters a lot more than, say, exactly what their skill set is and exactly what they bring to the table in terms of their experience.
Ankur, what's your perspective? What's your advice here?
So I think going back to trust, that was a really big part of the relationship. So traditionally, my wife has known the Natori brand for a very long time. And the first time I think we met Josie and Ken, we were kind of blown away. She's clearly an icon in the industry for the last 4 decades. And just her passion for product and for designing for a customer really blew us away. And then the other part of it was, as Ken referred to, Natori is a family business. Angara, to a certain extent, is also a family business. And we tend to think of things in decades, not months or quarters. We're both not VC funded. And thus we have very long time horizons to make things work. And just that approach and mindset is very rare nowadays. So for us to see another brand that's looking at it as over the next few decades is a blessing. And we can approach business in a way that really caters and addresses to that.
Wonderful. We actually have a couple more questions on LinkedIn, so I'm going to jump on to those. Princey Singh is asking, do you use machine learning in your business? If yes, how effective it has been so far? Ken, you want to start?
Sure. So, we have actually, through another YPO partnership, we're working with a platform called Albert, and they are an artificial intelligence platform. And we've been using them for the last 2 years to power, actually maybe 2.5 years now, to power all of our paid social media. So if you visited our site, and hopefully you have at natori.com, you will probably soon see ads chasing you around on Instagram and on Facebook. And we've been doing that through an artificial intelligence platform called Albert. We do otherwise, we're a 42-year-old business, still predominantly, we do a lot of wholesale. We have, I've thought about using more artificial intelligence kind of in-house, but for now, we're really just using it through our partner agency to power our paid social media.
Ankur, any perspective on that?
So I think for us, it's machine learning is very core to what we do. So for example, we have 4,000 different designs on our website. Each design has 128 permutations. So you can choose the quality of the gemstone, the size of the gemstone, and the different metal that works for you to get to the price point also that you would want. Now, that's a lot of choice for a consumer. The key for us is how do we narrow down that choice to what is most relevant to the consumer? So after, for example, a person has seen a product, 2 products in a row, and they've selected, let's say, best quality, 2-carat center stones for both, we know that's what they're looking for. So all of the sequential products that they see are in that range. So that becomes the default choice for the 3rd, 4th, 5th product that they see. And that really has helped substantially on the conversion side, trying to get the customer to what they're actually looking for as soon as possible. And machine learning has been key to that.
Wonderful. Well, the next question kind of gets into a recruiting category. So INR, hopefully I said the name correctly. Apologies if I misspelled it. But INR would like to know, when you're hiring younger generation right now to work for your company, what are you looking for from younger folks when you recruit them? Ken, let's start with you.
Well, I have always believed in, as much transparency as possible on both sides. I've been at the company now for, for 12 years. And, I've said, obviously interviewed people all up and down the scale. And I really have told people, some people come in and I know the attitude of some, they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't ask about this. This is kind of a taboo question. And I believe fully the opposite. I want, all applicants to ask every single question and that they want answered. And I too, and the people who recruit for us here too, will do the same. To me, the biggest recipe for not having success in a hire is for there to be unanswered questions on both sides. So, I've always offered full transparency on our side, and I've always, expected applicants to also both request transparency and provide it as well.
Ankur?
So I think the answer depends a little bit for us on the role. So for example, marketing versus technology would be different skill sets altogether. However, I think the one thing that is universal is passion. Are they really passionate about their role, about the industry we're in, and have they demonstrated that in some way? And I think that overcomes any of the other weaknesses. If they're really into it and they've demonstrated that to us, we're very positive on that.
And I think one other thing I'd say is that, I know that this company is great for a lot of people in terms of, people wanting to work here. It's also not great for another set of people, and that's totally okay. So I try to provide as true an outlook of how we work here, which is frenetic, which is sort of, entrepreneurial, which is, you could come in to work today thinking you're going to do A, B, C, and D. Something could happen and you end up doing F, M, N, and Z. Some people aren't okay with that, and that's totally fine. But if that's the case, this probably isn't the best environment for them to work at. But for people who like different challenges and who, can deal with a little bit of chaos and love, having all these different things on the table, even some things they might not be qualified to handle, I think this is a really exciting environment where you can get a lot of great hands-on learning.
Well, talking about the fit, Ken, here's a follow-up question from Luis Miguel Calante, and he's asking, how diverse is your team? And do you think diversity adds value to an organization? What do you think, Ken?
We do. So we're very proud to be woman-founded and woman-led. I mean, you're talking to me, I'm the president, but my mother is the founder. She remains the CEO. We're very proud that our full management team, our top 13 managers, 11 of them are women. So, we make women's clothing, and, our mission is really to make products that make women feel special about themselves. And our management team really does speak to that. So, like I said, from the comments earlier about trying to be transparent about our mission and about our vision, we really try to back that up through everything, whether that's through hiring, whether it's through social media, whether it's through everything. And we try to provide as much transparency, but really we are a company founded by women, led by women, and really cater all of our products and efforts to make women feel special.
I love it. I applaud it. Ankur, what's your perspective?
So we have 7 offices in 3 different countries. We're very much a global and multicultural company. I think, Ken, exactly as you said, we are also, in each of the offices that I could think of, we have far more women than men as compared to the general audience. So we are not majority women per se, but far more of a ratio than what is normal for that country, let's say. And I think jewelry is a big part of it, but also very creative in thinking, which we really appreciate.
Very good. There's we talked a little bit about sustainability, and so one of the things I want to talk about is business with purpose. Right, more and more today's consumers are interested in the story behind the company, and I see that both of your companies support multiple charities. Ken, yours focuses on causes that support women at various stages of their lives, and Ankur, yours focuses on causes that support, humane business practices and the improvement of underserved communities. So, Ankur, with so many causes from which to choose, what led you to choose the causes you support?
So for us, we're very focused on one particular type of charity, and that has worked. And we feel that we've added some value to that, which is specifically, one of the charities we're very involved in. We donate, we mentor to, we make sure that the young adults that are part of that program are given a lot of opportunity to succeed in terms of skill set acquisition. And then we also hire from that charity. And that's specifically to do with disabled people that have limbs, either arms or feet, that have either a serious condition or are missing altogether. And for us, we're fortunate that we're in e-commerce, where that segment of society is very, very strong in terms of the skill sets that they can bring to e-commerce, and their physical limitations, so to speak, are not necessarily a negative. Whereas that's not been the case for a lot of other industries. So we're very active on the mentorship side there, and we look for people that, despite the disability, are very passionate about whatever they do, and we try to develop their skill set accordingly. And also our offices are structured in such a way as to make it easy for them. So for everything from restrooms to entry and exit out of the office. And there've been a lot of our strongest performers have been from these programs as well.
Wonderful. Ken, what about you?
So yeah, in terms of the charity support, as I mentioned earlier, we have really supported as part of Natori Gives. The mission really is to support organizations that empower and educate women around the world. That really takes a number of different forms. The one I personally have been most involved with, one of the probably the most amazing women I've met in my life is this woman named Cecilia Flores Obanda. She was a victim of child sex trafficking in the Philippines. Survived, persisted, and has really since made it her lifelong mission, not only to help rehabilitate victims of child trafficking, but moreover, which is amazing because she's a small woman in her 60s, she actually prosecutes and goes on like sting operations to help weed out some of these some of these attempts to traffic some of these young children. So she's been amazing, a total inspiration. She's come and spoken to our company a number of times when she's been in New York. And moreover, the Voice of the Free, which is the name of her organization, has a shelter that's actually relatively close to one of our factories in the Philippines. So every time I go to the Philippines, I visit the shelter. And to see the resolve in these girls, despite everything they've gone through, has been amazing. And now what we're doing is for any graduates of that program who are interested in learning about design or interested in learning about manufacturing, we're creating a mentorship program, an ability for them to train actually in our factories once they graduate from the shelter. So that's been probably the organization that I've been most involved with.
Yeah, I can tell you're both very passionate about this, and we appreciate it, and you're my personal inspiration. Thank you for what you're doing. We have another question on LinkedIn, and it is from K Momoni, and he's asking, do you have a partnership in South America?
We don't. So we have, we certainly looked to South America. I think we're in 20 countries. Mostly in Asia and Europe, but we'd be open to exploring South America. I think there've been some issues. I know there's some protections in certain companies that make it harder for foreign businesses to go in. But if there's an opportunity, we'd certainly be willing to explore it.
Right. Okay. Well, I feel like I can talk to you for hours and hours, but I will shift into closing and into our last question, which is one of my favorites, and I tend to ask it often when I talk to especially YPO members, and that is, if there's one piece of advice you should share with the younger generation that aspires to follow in your footsteps, what would it be? Ankur, we'll start with you.
So I think test quickly and test often. If you're an entrepreneur, so one of the things we try to do is we try to limit tests to a budget of $10,000 in 3 weeks. So very short, relatively low budget, and to see if it works. If it works, then of course we can perfect the test. But it's surprising how many tests don't work that we think would before the test run. So especially with the digital age, the ability to experiment is pretty tremendous and very powerful. So a lot of the investment can go to things that once you've proven that they work, to scale that. And that didn't used to be the case, say 20 years ago.
Ken, what would be your advice?
So I'd have two. So one is, like I said, what's really helped propel the Natori Angara relationship has been the mutual trust. A lot of that was established before we discovered we were both in YPO, but certainly that common YPO bond really helped push things to the next level. So whether that's YPO, whether it's a different organization, having some network where you can find people and have just shared accountability is, I find, tremendously helpful. I think the other piece of advice is that, things, business, at least our business, it can't be a game of perfect. We have, I think, over the last 12 years, innovated more than a lot of other companies who were previously exclusively wholesale have. It would have been easy for us to say, even with our website, we need everything to be 100% perfect. Otherwise, let's just keep doing business how we were doing before. Without an ability and a willingness to push forward and take a little bit of risk, even if it leads to sometimes not great outcomes, I think given how quickly things are changing, you need to be able to roll the dice a little and realize that, you know, some of these new things you push out, they're not always going to be perfect out of the bat, but it kind of like, you know, if you're not innovating though, and if you're not pushing forward, and if forcing things to be perfect before you push forward is holding you back, really, I think the mindset has to be, in order to compete, you have to change. And with that change comes a little bit of risk that I think all of us need to tolerate.
Wonderful. Well, Ankur, Ken, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your insights with us today. It's been a fun conversation. And to those of you who were listening, thank you for joining us. This is YPO Presents. And until we talk next time.
Thanks much.
Thank you.
Thank you.